The gleaming towers of Celestine's royal palace stretched toward the binary suns like fingers of polished crystal, their surfaces reflecting the perpetual aurora that danced across the planet's lavender sky. Marcus Reed adjusted his courier bag as he approached the towering entrance, his worn boots echoing against the luminescent walkway that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. As an interstellar courier for Nexus Express, Marcus had delivered packages to every corner of the known galaxy. From the floating cities of Aquatica to the underground warrens of the mining worlds, he'd seen it all. But Celestine's royal palace never failed to take his breath away, even on his third visit this year. The palace guards, resplendent in their azure uniforms with silver threading, barely glanced at his credentials before waving him through the security checkpoint. Marcus caught fragments of their conversation as he passed. "Another suitor ceremony today," one muttered to his companion, shaking his head. "Poor bastards don't know what they're getting into." "Princess Zara's turned down every noble in 3 systems," the other replied. "King's getting desperate." Marcus raised an eyebrow but kept walking. Royal drama wasn't his concern. He was here to deliver a priority package to King Aldrich, get his signature, and catch the next transport off-world. Simple job, decent pay, and he'd be back among the stars by evening. The Grand Hall of Celestine was a masterpiece of alien architecture that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Graceful arches soared overhead, supported by pillars that appeared to be made of solidified starlight. Floating crystals provided illumination, casting prismatic patterns across the assembled crowd of nobles, dignitaries, and courtiers. Marcus felt distinctly out of place in his standard-issue black courier uniform, despite the fact that it was tailored to show off his athletic build. The assembled aliens were a spectacular display of the galaxy's diversity, some with shimmering scales, others with elaborate feathered crests, and many with the distinctive blue-tinted skin of Celestine's native population. Name and business? A stern-faced official with silver-streaked hair and pointed ears stepped forward, his burgundy robes marking him as a high-ranking court functionary. "Marcus Reed, Nexus Express," Marcus replied, producing his credentials and the package's chain of custody documentation. "Priority delivery for His Majesty King Aldrich." The official's expression softened slightly as he examined the paperwork. "Everything appears to be in order. However, you'll need to wait for an audience. The king is currently presiding over the princess's suitor selection ceremony." Marcus glanced around the hall, noting the nervous energy of the assembled nobles. "How long will that take?" "That depends entirely on Her Highness," the official replied with a diplomatic smile. "Please, join the queue for petitioners. The king will see you after the ceremony concludes." With a resigned sigh, Marcus took his place in line behind a group of merchants discussing trade routes. The sooner he got this done, the sooner he could return to the comfortable solitude of his ship. A trumpet fanfare filled the hall, and Marcus looked up to see what had caused the sudden hush that fell over the crowd. His breath caught in his throat. Princess Zara descended the grand staircase like a vision from a dream. Her flowing gown of midnight blue seemed to capture and reflect the floating crystal's light, creating the illusion that she wore the night sky itself. Her skin held the subtle blue tint of her people, but it seemed to glow with an inner radiance that made her appear almost ethereal. Cascading silver hair framed a face of perfect symmetry, and her eyes, a striking violet that seemed to hold depths of both wisdom and mischief, swept over the assembled crowd with regal confidence. Even from across the vast hall, Marcus found himself transfixed. There was something about her presence, a magnetic quality that transcended mere physical beauty. She moved with the fluid grace of a dancer and the commanding authority of a born leader. "Magnificent, isn't she?" The merchant beside him in line whispered. "They say she's the most beautiful woman in 12 systems." Marcus forced himself to look away, focusing on his delivery manifest. "Way above your pay grade," he reminded himself. He was just a courier, and she was royalty. Best to keep his mind on business. King Aldrich rose from his throne, an imposing figure despite his advanced age. His voice carried clearly through the hall, amplified by the palace's acoustic design. "Citizens of Celestine, nobles of the realm, we gather today for a most important ceremony. Princess Zara will now select her mate from among this season's worthy suitors. The crowd stirred with anticipation as a procession of elaborately dressed nobles approached the dais. Marcus tried to concentrate on his paperwork, but found his attention repeatedly drawn to the spectacle unfolding before him. Each suitor was more grandly attired than the last. There was Lord Vex of the Outer Rim, his reptilian features highlighted by a cloak of living light. Count Zorian from the Crystal Worlds wore robes that seemed to be woven from captured starlight itself. Prince Kellen of the Void Traders stood tall in his traditional black and silver regalia, his pale skin a stark contrast to his dark hair. One by one, they approached Princess Zara, bowing deeply and presenting their credentials, their gifts, and their flowery declarations of devotion. Marcus couldn't help but notice how the princess received each with polite but distant courtesy, her violet eyes never betraying the slightest interest. "I have ancient bloodlines that stretch back to the founding of the galaxy," proclaimed one suitor. "My fleet controls the richest trading routes in the sector," boasted another. "My technological innovations have revolutionized 3 worlds," claimed a third. Through it all, Princess Zara remained composed but unmoved. Marcus found himself wondering what kind of man could possibly interest someone who seemed so completely self-possessed. The last suitor finished his presentation and stepped back. The hall fell silent, waiting for the princess's decision. Marcus watched as she surveyed the assembled nobles, her expression thoughtful but revealing nothing. Finally, Princess Zara spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "I have considered all the worthy candidates presented to me today." The nobles straightened, each hoping to be chosen. "And I have made my decision." The tension in the hall was palpable. Marcus found himself holding his breath along with everyone else. Princess Zara's violet eyes swept the crowd once more, and then, impossibly, they locked directly onto his. "I choose him." The hall erupted in shocked gasps and confused murmurs. Marcus looked behind him, certain she must be indicating someone else, but there was no one there. The other petitioners had stepped back, leaving him standing alone and exposed. "Me?" Marcus squeaked, his voice cracking embarrassingly. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Your Highness, there must be some mistake. I'm just a courier." "There is no mistake," Princess Zara declared, descending from the dais with fluid grace. The crowd parted before her like water, creating a clear path between them. "You are my choice." As she approached, Marcus was struck by just how beautiful she was up close. Her violet eyes held flecks of silver that seemed to dance in the crystal light, and her skin had a luminous quality that was utterly captivating. But it was more than her physical beauty that drew him, there was an intelligence in her gaze, a strength of character that was evident in every movement. "But I didn't even apply to be a suitor," Marcus protested weakly, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm not a noble. I'm not even from this world." "I am aware of that," Princess Zara replied, stopping just arm's length away. "Yet my choice remains unchanged." A royal advisor hurried forward, his face flushed with distress. "My lady, perhaps you should reconsider. This person is clearly not of noble birth, and his background is completely unknown to us." "My decision is final," Princess Zara said firmly, never taking her eyes off Marcus's face. "I have made my choice according to our laws and traditions." The advisor leaned closer to Marcus, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. To refuse the princess's selection would be considered a grave insult to the crown. "Choose your next words very carefully, human." Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, his mind racing. This was insane. He was just here to deliver a package, not to get entangled in royal marriage politics. But looking into Princess Zara's eyes, he found himself at a loss for words. "Your Highness," he began carefully, "I'm deeply honored by your choice, but I'm only here to deliver this package to His Majesty. Perhaps we could discuss this after I complete my business." King Aldrich, who had been watching the exchange with growing amazement, suddenly seemed to remember his royal duties. "Ah yes, the delivery. Please, bring it forward." Marcus gratefully seized the opportunity to escape the intensity of Princess Zara's gaze. He approached the throne and presented the ornate package with a formal bow. "Your Majesty, if you could just sign here to confirm receipt." The king opened the elaborate box with practiced ease, then immediately staggered backward, his face turning an alarming shade of gray. The package fell from his hands, its contents spilling across the marble floor. "Poison," someone screamed from the crowd. "The human assassin has killed the king," another voice shouted. Before Marcus could react, palace guards tackled him to the ground, energy restraints crackling around his wrists. The last thing he saw before being dragged away was Princess Zara's face, not angry or betrayed as he might have expected, but thoughtful and calculating, as if she were solving a complex puzzle. As the guards hauled him toward the dungeons, Marcus's mind reeled with the impossibility of it all. In the space of an hour, he'd gone from simple courier to royal consort to accused assassin. And through it all, the memory of Princess Zara's violet eyes remained burned into his consciousness, along with the unsettling certainty that his life had just changed forever. The dungeon cell was exactly as cold and unwelcoming as he'd expected, but Marcus barely noticed his surroundings. He was too busy trying to process the catastrophic turn his simple delivery had taken, and wondering what Princess Zara could possibly have been thinking when she chose him from among all those noble suitors. One thing was certain, this was definitely not the routine job he'd signed up for. The twin moons of Celestine cast ethereal silver light through the narrow window of Marcus's cell, painting ghostly patterns across the damp stone walls. Princess Zara moved through the dungeon corridors like a wraith, her footsteps silent on the ancient flagstones. Gone were the flowing gowns and glittering jewels of her royal station. Instead, she wore a form-fitting suit of midnight blue that allowed her to blend with the shadows, her silver hair bound in a practical braid that gleamed like spun moonlight. She had spent the hours since Marcus's arrest carefully planning this moment. The dungeon's guard rotations, the location of every surveillance crystal, the timing of the shift changes, she knew it all. After years of playing the perfect princess, smiling and nodding through endless ceremonies and political machinations, she finally had a chance to take action. The truth was, she had been watching Marcus read long before he'd entered the throne room that day. His courier routes had brought him to Celestine 3 times in the past year, and each time, she had found herself drawn to observe him from afar. There was something about the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, professional but not cold, that intrigued her in ways the posturing nobles never had. When she had looked into his eyes during the suitor ceremony, she had seen genuine surprise and honesty. No calculation, no political maneuvering, just a man caught completely off guard by an impossible situation. And when the poison had been revealed, she had watched his face carefully. The shock and confusion had been absolutely authentic. Marcus Reed was many things, but he was no assassin. Now, as she approached his cell, Zara felt her pulse quicken with anticipation. She had spent her entire life being told what to do, whom to marry, how to behave. Tonight, for the first time, she was choosing her own path. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Marcus said quietly as she emerged from the shadows. He was sitting on the stone bench that served as his bed, looking remarkably composed for someone facing execution. "Though I have to admit, this isn't quite how I imagined our first private conversation would go." Zara stepped closer to the energy bars that contained him, noting how the blue light played across his features. "You were expecting me?" "A man doesn't get chosen by a princess in front of half the galaxy without learning to expect the unexpected," Marcus replied with a wry smile. "Besides, you looked like you were solving a puzzle when they dragged me away. I figured you'd want to check your work." Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling. "And what conclusion did you reach about my puzzle-solving abilities? Either you're here to gloat over your successful assassination plot, or you believe I'm innocent." Marcus stood and approached the bars, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "Given that you're here alone and wearing what I'm guessing is your version of stealth gear, I'm hoping it's the latter." "Very perceptive." Zara produced an elegant crystal key from her sleeve. "I believe you're innocent, Marcus Reed. The question is, are you willing to help me prove it? The energy bars flickered and died with barely a whisper. Marcus stepped out of the cell, immediately scanning the corridor for threats. The guards. Sedated. An old palace recipe mixed into their evening meal. Zara handed him his confiscated equipment belt, complete with his courier sidearm. Non-lethal rounds only, I noticed. Interesting choice for someone supposedly planning an assassination. Marcus strapped on the belt, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. I've never killed anyone, and I don't intend to start now. But I appreciate the vote of confidence. He looked at her intently. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Because when you looked at me in that throne room, you saw me, Zara replied, her voice soft but fierce. Not the crown, not the political advantages, not the alliance possibilities. Just me. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Before Marcus could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. Zara immediately pressed herself against the wall, pulling Marcus into the shadows beside her. The space was cramped, forcing them to stand close together, and Marcus was acutely aware of her warm presence and the subtle floral scent of her hair. This way, she whispered against his ear, sending an unexpected shiver down his spine. They moved through the labyrinthine passages beneath the palace, Zara leading with the confidence of someone who had explored every hidden corner of her home. Marcus followed, impressed by her silent grace and obvious familiarity with covert movement. This was clearly not the sheltered princess the court believed her to be. They emerged into a vast underground chamber filled with ancient machinery that hummed with quiet power. Massive conduits carried water and energy throughout the palace complex, their steady thrumming providing cover for any small sounds they might make. The old aqueduct system, Zara explained in a low voice. Most people have forgotten it exists, but it connects to the city's main water treatment facilities. We can follow it to the lower districts. Marcus surveyed the chamber, his military training automatically cataloging potential threats and escape routes. Security. Minimal. Who would expect anyone to break out through the sewers? Zara's eyes glittered with mischief. Though we will need to cross the main chamber, which is likely monitored. I count 4 sensor clusters with overlapping coverage, Marcus observed. We'll be exposed for at least 30 seconds crossing that distance. Zara smiled and produced a small device from her belt. Watch this. She pressed a control, and the chamber's lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by faint emergency strips along the floor. Alarm bells began ringing somewhere above them. Power surge, Zara said smugly. They'll be busy trying to restore full power for the next few minutes. Emergency lighting only provides basic illumination, not enough for the sensors to get a clear image. They sprinted across the chamber, Marcus's enhanced vision allowing him to navigate the maze of pipes and machinery. Zara moved beside him with fluid grace, her athletic ability evident in every step. They had nearly reached the far side when a spotlight suddenly blazed to life, pinning them in its glare. There. The princess and the assassin. Energy bolts sizzled past them as palace guards opened fire from concealed positions. Marcus grabbed Zara's hand and dove behind a massive water recycling unit as more shots lit up the darkness around them. So much for minimal security, Marcus muttered, returning fire with his stun weapon. Any other exits? The maintenance tunnel, about 20 meters to our left, Zara replied, remarkably calm under fire. But we'll be completely exposed getting there. Marcus assessed their situation, counting muzzle flashes and calculating angles of attack. I make it 6 guards, possibly more coming. We need a distraction. Zara reached into her pack and withdrew several small crystalline spheres that pulsed with inner light. Sonic disruptors. Cover your ears. Before Marcus could ask what they were, she hurled the spheres toward the guard positions. They shattered on impact, releasing waves of sound that had the guards crying out in pain and clutching their heads. Move! Zara commanded, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the maintenance tunnel. They reached the opening just as reinforcements poured into the chamber from multiple entrances. Marcus boosted Zara up into the tunnel first, trying not to be distracted by her graceful movements, then scrambled up after her as energy bolts scorched the wall behind him. The maintenance tunnel was cramped, forcing them to crawl single file through the narrow space. Marcus found himself directly behind Zara, acutely aware of her proximity and trying to focus on their escape rather than the way her tactical suit hugged her curves. "Enjoying the view back there?" Zara asked with amusement, glancing back at him. "Just making sure we're not being followed," Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Of course you are." Her musical laugh echoed softly in the confined space. The tunnel eventually opened into a broader passage lit by phosphorescent fungi that cast an eerie blue-green glow. They could finally stand upright, though Zara remained close to Marcus's side. "We should keep moving," Marcus said reluctantly, though part of him was in no hurry to put distance between them. "They'll figure out where this leads soon enough." "Already anticipated," Zara replied, producing a holographic map from her pack. "There's a transport hub 2 levels down. We can access the city's underground transit system from there." Marcus studied the map, impressed by her thoroughness. "You've been planning this for a while." "Since the moment I saw you in the throne room," Zara admitted. "I told you, I never make choices without reasons." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, alarm klaxons began blaring through the tunnel system. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. "They're sealing the maintenance sectors," Zara said, studying readings on a device attached to her wrist. "We have maybe 3 minutes before these passages lock down completely." They ran through the twisting tunnels as massive blast doors began slamming shut behind them. Marcus's courier training had kept him in excellent physical condition, but he was impressed by how easily Zara matched his pace. Her years of apparent leisure had clearly included extensive physical conditioning. "The hub is just ahead," Zara called out as they rounded a final corner. She was right, and so was Marcus's growing suspicion that nothing about this escape would be simple. 6 palace guards in full combat armor blocked their path, weapons raised and ready. "Surrender, Your Highness," their leader commanded. "We have no wish to harm you, but you must return to the palace immediately." "And the human?" Zara asked coolly. "The human dies. Royal decree." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Zara. "How about a counteroffer? You let us pass, and we forget this conversation ever happened." The guard captain's helmeted head turned toward him with obvious disdain. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate, assassin." "Actually," Zara said, her voice carrying the full weight of royal authority, "he is. Because I'm ordering you to stand down. Our orders come from the Regent Council, Your Highness. They supersede your authority in this matter." Zara's eyes flashed dangerously. "The Regent Council that assembled without my father's knowledge or consent? How interesting." She stepped forward, every inch the royal princess despite her tactical gear. "Tell me, Captain Thorne, how long have you been taking orders from Minister Corvin?" The slight stiffening of the captain's posture told Marcus that Zara had hit her mark. Whoever this Minister Corvin was, he was clearly involved in the conspiracy. "Stand aside, Captain," Zara continued. "Unless you'd like me to discuss your private meetings with the minister in front of the full court." After a long, tense moment, Captain Thorne stepped aside, gesturing for his men to do the same. "We never saw you, Your Highness." "Wise choice." Zara swept past them with regal dignity, Marcus close behind. Once they were out of earshot, Marcus couldn't help but ask, "Private meetings?" "Every conspiracy needs its inside people," Zara replied, leading him to a sleek transport pod. "I make it my business to know who's meeting with whom in the dark corners of the palace." As they settled into the pod and Zara initiated the launch sequence, Marcus found himself studying her profile in the soft glow of the control panels. "You're full of surprises, Princess." "Oh, Marcus," she said, turning to meet his gaze with eyes that sparkled with mischief and determination. "You haven't seen anything yet." The transport pod shot forward into the tunnel network, carrying them toward an uncertain future and away from the only life either of them had ever known. But as Marcus looked at the remarkable woman beside him, he found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected journey might lead somewhere worth going. Brix Valen had seen many desperate people pass through the Nexus, but few had arrived with quite as much style as a runaway princess and her alleged assassin companion. From his perch in the observation deck of his underground establishment, he watched the pair emerge from the transport pod with the fluid grace of practiced fugitives. Even disheveled from their escape, Princess Zara moved with unmistakable royal bearing, while the human, Marcus Reed, according to the bounty notices already flooding the networks, carried himself with the alert confidence of someone comfortable with danger. The Nexus existed in the forgotten spaces beneath Celestine's gleaming surface, a sprawling complex of interconnected caverns and abandoned infrastructure that had become home to those who lived outside the law. Brix had spent 15 years building his reputation as the most reliable information broker in 3 systems, and his establishment reflected that success. What had once been a derelict water treatment facility now housed a sophisticated operation that would have impressed even the palace's intelligence services. Holographic displays flickered with data streams from across the galaxy, while his network of contacts fed him information about everything from shipping schedules to political conspiracies. The main floor bustled with activity as smugglers, bounty hunters, and various other unsavory characters conducted their business in the relative safety of neutral territory. Brix maintained that neutrality through a combination of useful services, discreet protection, and the understood threat of what happened to those who caused trouble in his domain. He was a striking figure himself, tall and lean with the silver-flecked skin of the Stellari people, his dark hair shot through with metallic threads that caught the light when he moved. His clothes were expensive but practical, tailored to accommodate the various tools of his trade while projecting an image of prosperity and reliability. Everything about him suggested a man who had carved out his own space in a dangerous galaxy and intended to keep it. "Sanctuary," Princess Zara said simply as she approached his elevated platform, her violet eyes meeting his with steady determination. "We need information, and we're willing to pay for both." Brix leaned back in his chair, studying the unlikely pair with genuine interest. "Your Highness, what an unexpected pleasure. Though I have to say, your current circumstances are far more interesting than your usual court appearances." He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Can I offer you refreshments? You both look like you've had quite an evening." Marcus remained standing, his hand resting casually near his weapon. "No offense, but we're not exactly in a position to trust strangers right now." "None taken," Brix replied with an amused smile. "Paranoia is a survival trait in your current situation. But if I wanted you dead or captured, you never would have made it past the entrance. My reputation depends on maintaining the safety of my establishment." Zara settled into one of the offered chairs with practiced grace. "Brix Valen, isn't it? I've heard interesting things about your operation." "All true, I'm sure," Brix said with mock modesty. "Though I'm curious how a sheltered princess comes to know about underground information brokers." "The same way she knows about sonic disruptors and maintenance tunnel layouts," Marcus interjected, finally taking a seat but remaining alert. "Princess Zara is full of surprises." "Indeed." Brix activated a privacy screen around their seating area, the air shimmering slightly as the sound dampeners engaged. "Now then, what kind of information are you seeking? I assume this relates to the rather dramatic events at the palace earlier today." Zara leaned forward, her expression serious. "Someone used Marcus as an unwitting pawn to poison my father. We need to know who, and why. The official story is that your courier friend here is a hired assassin working for enemies of the crown," Brix noted, pulling up holographic displays showing news feeds and bounty notices. "Quite a substantial price on both your heads already. Someone wants you found very badly." Marcus studied the displays with growing concern. "That was fast. Too fast for a normal investigation." "My thoughts exactly," Brix agreed. "This has all the hallmarks of a prepared narrative. Someone knew exactly how they wanted this story to unfold. He manipulated the displays, showing shipping records and communication logs. Your delivery, Mr. Reed, originated from a freight forwarding service on Kepler Station. The manifest shows it was paid for in untraceable credits, and the sender used a false identity. That's not unusual for courier work, Marcus said. Plenty of legitimate clients value discretion. True, but this particular service has been flagged by my sources as a front for various illegal activities. Money laundering, weapons trafficking, the occasional assassination contract. Briggs highlighted specific entries in the data. What's interesting is the timing. The order for your delivery was placed exactly 3 days after Princess Zara announced she would be selecting a mate from this season's suitors. Zara's eyes widened slightly. Someone planned this entire scenario around the ceremony. It appears so. But here's where it gets truly interesting. Briggs brought up a new set of data, showing financial transactions and communication patterns. The credits used to pay for your delivery can be traced, with some effort, to accounts controlled by Minister Corvin's office. The name hit both Marcus and Zara like a physical blow. Marcus had never heard of the man, but Zara's reaction made it clear this was significant. Corvin, she breathed, her hands clenching into fists. I should have known. He's been pushing for increased authority over palace security, claiming my father was too trusting of outsiders. Minister Corvin has been quite busy lately, Briggs continued, displaying more information. Increased private meetings, unusual financial transfers, and several conversations with certain unsavory individuals who specialize in making problems disappear permanently. Marcus leaned forward, studying the data. This suggests the assassination attempt was just the beginning. What was the endgame? Power, most likely, Briggs replied. With the king dead and you framed for his murder, Princess Zara would be emotionally devastated and politically isolated. She would need strong advisors to guide her through the crisis. Enter Minister Corvin, ready to shoulder the burden of leadership during these difficult times. And eventually arrange a marriage that would solidify his control, Zara added bitterly. Probably to his son Davin. I've been rejecting his advances for months. Briggs nodded approvingly. You're beginning to see the scope of the conspiracy. But I'm afraid it goes deeper than even that. He activated another display, showing surveillance footage from various locations around the palace. Minister Corvin has been systematically placing his people in key positions throughout the security apparatus. Captain Thorne, whom you encountered earlier, is just one of several officers who have been compromised. Marcus studied the surveillance images with growing alarm. How many people are involved in this? Enough to make your situation extremely precarious, Briggs admitted. Corvin has been planning this for months, possibly years. Your unexpected arrival simply provided him with the perfect opportunity to accelerate his timeline. The weight of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They were facing not just a single corrupt official, but an entire network of conspirators embedded throughout the government they had grown up trusting. There's more, Briggs continued reluctantly. My sources indicate that Minister Corvin has already begun the next phase of his plan. Professional bounty hunters are being recruited, with instructions to bring you back alive if possible, but with authorization to use lethal force if necessary. Who? Marcus asked, his military instincts already calculating threat assessments and escape routes. Jenna Cross, among others. She's considered one of the best in the business, with a reputation for never failing to bring in her targets. If Corvin has hired her, he's serious about ending this quickly. Zara reached over and took Marcus's hand, surprising him with the gesture. Her touch was warm and reassuring, a reminder that they were in this together. What do you recommend? Briggs considered the question carefully. Normally, I would suggest disappearing completely. New identities, transportation to the outer rim, start fresh somewhere beyond Corvin's reach. But that would mean abandoning your father and your people to his machinations. Not an option, Zara said firmly. Celestine is my home, and those are my people. I won't abandon them to a usurper. Then you'll need evidence, Brix replied. Solid, undeniable proof of Corvin's involvement that can be presented to the legitimate authorities. The problem is getting close enough to obtain it without walking into a trap. Marcus was studying the surveillance footage with increasing focus. These images show Corvin meeting with various contacts. Are any of these meetings scheduled to happen again? Actually, yes. Brix highlighted a particular entry. Tomorrow night, Corvin is scheduled to meet with a representative from the Syndicate, a criminal organization that specializes in political destabilization. The meeting is set to take place in the old industrial district, in a facility that's supposed to be abandoned. That's our chance, Marcus said immediately. We get surveillance equipment, record the meeting, and use it as evidence. Extremely dangerous, Brix warned. The facility will be heavily guarded, and if you're caught, there will be no denying your guilt. Sometimes the most dangerous path is the only one worth taking, Zara replied, her violet eyes blazing with determination. Brix looked between them, seeing the resolve in their faces and the way they instinctively moved closer together when facing danger. Despite himself, he was impressed by their courage and their obvious devotion to each other. In his line of work, he rarely encountered people willing to risk everything for principles rather than profit. Very well, he said finally. I'll provide you with the equipment you need and detailed intelligence about the facility. But I want payment in advance, and I want assurances that my involvement will never be revealed. Agreed, Zara said immediately. Name your price. Information, Brix replied with a slight smile. When this is over, assuming you survive, I want a full briefing on everything you discover about Corvin's network. That kind of intelligence is worth more than credits to someone in my position. They spent the next several hours planning their infiltration, with Brix providing detailed schematics of the facility and sophisticated surveillance equipment that would allow them to record from a safe distance. As they worked together, Marcus found himself increasingly impressed by both Zara's tactical knowledge and Brix's thoroughness. It was nearly dawn when they finally concluded their preparations. Brix had arranged temporary accommodation in a secure section of the Nexus, where they could rest before attempting their dangerous mission. One more thing, Brix said as they prepared to leave his office. The feelings between you two, they're genuine, aren't they? This isn't just a political alliance or a convenience born of shared danger. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances, and Marcus felt his heart skip as he saw the warmth in her violet eyes. It's real, Zara said softly, reaching for Marcus's hand again. More real than anything I've ever felt. Brix nodded approvingly. Good. You'll need that connection for what's coming. Trust each other, and you might just survive this. As they left the office, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Brix knew more than he was saying. But for now, they had a plan and a chance to expose the conspiracy. Tomorrow night, they would either clear their names and save the kingdom, or die trying. Either way, they would face it together.